So welcome back. I lied. It didn't record another day. This is the same day as evidenced by the same clothes that I'm wearing. I wanted to, before I left for the office, because I left for the weekend. It looks like we're gonna get a lot of snow, and I'm gonna be away from my office. So the next bit that I'm gonna record is gonna be on resilience. The next hour is gonna be totally devoted to developing resilience. There have been a lot of research. It used to be that the ACE study would end with this depressing, this is the bleak outlook and all these neurological problems. But now that's not the case. The case is that we have the medicine. We have things that can help, help people become better. There are several books that I'm gonna reference. This obviously Dr. Hellman, with his project with the Enid schools to, Hope Rising and help instilling hope. I've also got a lot of other resources that I've amassed over the years to kind of help. This was one, talking about how stress really impacts us. This is really a seminal work. If you're interested in this topic, this guy is like the like most esteemed researcher on the topic, and this book is a seminal work. So if you wanted to really jump into the topic and get to know more about trauma and overcoming trauma, that would be a must read. This is another good one. This Gabor Mate talks a lot about addiction and trauma. I'm a certified, well, I've been trained in TFCBT, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a lot taken from that book. There's so much research that links addiction and adverse childhood experiences. This book is good in that regard. I've also tapped into a resource with this book here. And I'm going to integrate a lot. It's actually cited by a number of those authors. This was just published in the past year. I got the privilege to see this guy talk, Dr. Rediger. He graduated from Harvard, also graduated from Princeton. He graduated from Harvard with his medical, his MD, and he graduated from Princeton with a master's in theology. So I was pretty taken. He was down at a conference in Oklahoma City a few years ago, and I saw that Vita and that resume. I was like, yeah, this guy's got some similar interests to me. I've got some a theology degree up there, so I was like, I kind of want to hear this guy talk. This guy was fascinating. He talked a lot about this thing called spontaneous healing, and what that is, it's basically a situation where medicine has no real concrete explanation for when people go into remission from a cancer or a terminal illness. And he makes the argument, he made the argument then in 2015 when I saw him, and also now in the book, that these things are actually more common than people like to realize. They're often written off by, so he says, I've gone to talk to numerous groups and a room full of doctors, and I'll ask a bunch of family practitioners, it's who among you have had somebody who've had a terminal illness and that has suddenly just gone into remission, and the person is made like this miraculous recovery, and a handful, not just a handful, but a room full of hands would go up, not like everybody, but like over half, like traditionally so this is. And he's like, what did you do with those things? How did you deal with that? Well, we just kind of wrote it off. We just kind of we're happy for the patient, but we didn't really have an explanation. These things are actually fairly common, I'll say, much more common than is realized in a lot of the literature. And so there's actually some traction gaining from his research. On how these things occur, his argument for studying what he's studying there is, we spent a lot of time looking at the Michael Jordans of the world, the Roger Bannisters, the Serena Williams, the guy, Michael Phelps, Tiger Woods. We spent a lot of time looking at really great athletes and trying to discern what it is that makes these particular athletes great. Even, people that are very, very smart, we try to kind of discern and pick apart what it is that makes them who they are. His argument is we have been missing the boat in medicine in that we haven't been studying these people who are overcoming these terminal illnesses, these horrible conditions that are generally, it's like a death sentence. And yet there are many examples, and yet they're not in the literature. People don't spend time studying them, and so that was his niche that he's carved out, and it's gaining traction. And he's really gone through and looked at these. So he's interviewed people who have survived these terminal illnesses, and he's done a lot of research into other people who've looked into similar type of situations, and he's come out with this the life-changing science of spontaneous healing. He's come out with this pretty vigorous program of promoting health. It's like this wellness model. It's not just like surviving, it's thriving. And so when I'm reading this, there's a study that talks about rats who have been, they're lab rats that have been through horrible circumstances. They've endured, traumatic things as rats, and they've mapped their brains, looked at them neurologically, and they have this damage due to cortisol, right? These architectural changes. I need to stop calling it damage, but these architectural changes due to cortisol. And what they've done is that they've then incorporated these rats into something called it's like this super supportive network of healthy rats. In other words, it's like a functional rat society, and they insert these traumatized rats. And so think about our classrooms. I hate to use the equivalent of rats, but they're putting these traumatized rats in these small societies of rat culture, so to speak. But what happens is that the rats tend to get better, and they tend to improve, and they tend to become healthier. And the reason why is because they've tracked this oxytocin release, this bonding chemical. And so I'm going to talk a lot about that in resilience, is this chemical called oxytocin. That's really where the resilience science has gone. But it's induced in interaction with others. And so you can, and it's also, he doesn't really, he talks a little bit about oxytocin here, but there's a lot of other things. But it's like, if we can put the kids and us, ourselves, in these environments where they're healing environments, where there's supportive networks around us, that's when the magic happens. That's when we can overcome, and when things start to change. And so that's my positivity on this. And that's where I'm going to go over the next hour.